Morning, everyone. Welcome to Hire Moment Mastermind. I'm Shira Lotzar, happy to be your co-host today, joined by my colleagues Vern Schellinger and Alki Thompson, fellow recruiters and coaches. And we are very happy to help you with whatever your job search questions may be. So this is an open Q&A. Whatever job search question is on your mind, the three of us are happy to help you navigate through it. So who would like to start out with a question? Susan.
Oh, good. Yeah. I'm starting a side business. I'm a digital marketing nonprofit fundraiser, kind of in the putting the money behind the project kind of person over my entire career. I'm currently starting a class, a hybrid online class to teach professionals how to use LinkedIn as distinct from product sales people, which most LinkedIn information really is about. And I'm also job hunting. And I guess my question is, how would a recruiter look at that dual thing? I kind of see the course as it's hybrid, so combo online and live, and I see it as a kind of second source of income that I can carry on even after I get hired. But how does a recruiter look at somebody like me who's and I've mostly been on my own. I went on my own for elder care purposes, and then that just was successful and I stayed. But I really miss being with people and live, and I'd like to get back into an organization or company that I think I could help.
So there's actually there's two different aspects of what you're talking about, and Alki and Vern would love to hear your thoughts too. I'm going to split them apart. So I'm going to address the education piece, and then the fact that you happen to mention that you have actually been solo for a while. That's actually a very interesting sidebar. That's why I want to split.
Okay.
From an education perspective, no one cares. I mean, take courses to get certifications, it's all fine. Now, of course, if a certification or a course is related to your field, that's even better, right?
Tons. I'm totally up to date.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's considered continuing education. Recruiters love that. Great. Keep it going. Wonderful. Okay. So that's a no-brainer answer. It was the fact that you mentioned that you're solo, that actually to me is the other side of it. So recruiters, may I ask you just very quickly, you don't have to go into all the details, but just super quick question. How long have you been solo?
Like 20 years.
Yeah. So
although I've hit organizational clients where I was like a fractional executive.
Oh, okay. Is that listed on your
I can do this is why I'm asking you the question to see what you're picking up on. So I'll put that in.
All right. So here's kind of the situation. Many recruiters, and when I say recruiters, I mean, I'm just representing employers in general. Okay. So anybody that has employment hat on, often, not always, but often, they have a little baby pink flag when it comes to people who have been solo for a long time.
And I've never really liked the solo part. I've made it work because I had to.
So here's the thing, but they don't know that. I'm just very objectively, they have no idea your feeling about it, why you did it, what you want. That's not other than anything that you might write in your about section. Now, if you write your about section, what you did, maybe why you did it, and that's specifically like right at the top that you are intentionally going after full-time W-2 positions, that can actually overcome any objection they have. Because the fact of the matter is that when an employer sees a resume or a LinkedIn profile, which same, they make assumptions. Okay. And the assumptions can be anything, in your case, something like, oh, the person's been solo for a long time. Are they going to be comfortable working for somebody again? Right. Reporting in and having somebody else be their authority. They're not going to have their own flexible schedule, blah, blah, blah. Right. And are they going to be okay working with a team? I mean, there's all these different sort of things that people think, rightly or wrongly, is just kind of a bias, if you will. Now, if they do take the opportunity to interview you, obviously you can overcome those things. You can overcome it in your cover letter, for sure. Again, you can overcome it in your about section, but understand that is typically how an employer is going to feel. And so you need to overcome it, is my point.
Gotcha.
Now, you
Yes.
could even say, not only in your about section, but even in the job description part of your, self-employment, even as a first line, like with little asterisks around it or something that's going to make it stand out, and say something about, after an X year, tenure, and now intentionally transitioning into the W-2 workforce. So it's very, very clear right there in the job description piece that you are right out there. In other words, it's not just a kind of a passing fancy, okay? Because there are people who will do that. They'll say, well, I'm happy to consider W-2, but I'm still doing my own business.
Yeah, yeah.
If that's not you, if you are for real, head deep dive, going into W-2 again, you have got to let people know that in the job description, in the about section, in the cover letter, neon lights. Do you know what I mean? Right. You might even want to put it in the headline. Something about like I'm making this up. I don't know exactly your brand, but let's just say I'm just going to call you a digital marketing professional. Okay.
Yeah.
That's correct here.
And then maybe a little pipeline and say returning to, full-time employment. Now, I don't normally recommend that because I don't encourage people to say seeking a job or seeking employment. But in your case, you may want to have a little phrase that says returning to, a W-2 or something like that. Okay. But
well, it's interesting to me that you several times said W-2 employment, which I never would have thought to put those words in, but that sounds like that phrasing is good.
Yeah, exactly. Alki, I see you've been nodding your head the whole time here. Do you want to say anything about this?
No, I'm just stretching my neck.
Nice, sounds good.
So everything I'm nodding because everything that Cher is saying is 1,000,000% on point. And so as a recruiter who's worked in-house, hiring managers, employers, they see you how they see you. And a lot of times it's just the resume first. So without any type of conversation, introduction, transition, mention of that, you're branded. She used that word a second ago, but you're branded by what they see. So if they look and they're like, this is a contractor, this is a consultant, what is she doing? Why is she even applying with us? We're a W-2 company. We're looking for full-time people here.
Right.
So you have to speak their language because their interpretation of your background is, this is a consultant. What is she doing applying? So normally, Ashura was saying, yeah, we're working with folks doing resumes and they are, we would tell you, yeah, don't write this whole bio thing and don't add all these crazy story statements or narratives. In this case, you have to, because you're trying to get that conversation and you have to rebrand yourself.
That's
or if you're applying for W-2 jobs, and Shira probably, she knows this too, you can be on the side talking to people about looking for consultant roles or contracts. And if you get a good one, stay out there on your own solo. But when you're applying for W-2 jobs, it has to say W-2 to get to the conversation so you can explain more then, and they can ask you more questions, because without it, you're not even going to get the chance to do that.
And on your resume too, because actually, Alki, you alluded to this about your bio or whatever. In this case, you're right. Normally, I would say on a resume, don't have a summary, don't have all that stuff. It's kind of wasted real estate. However, in your case, I would at the top, have a note that says, again, asterisks, whatever, returning after X years of, self-employment, returning to traditional W-2 full-time employment. Make it super clear.
That's interesting. I mean, this is a great marketing point because I've kind of thought my way from my perspective up to what you're saying, but you're giving me language and I'm listening to you. I'm now able to see it through your eyes.
Yeah, got to make it clear.
Because I also I bring a lot of skills from the kinds of positions I've had. I'm not a rapid turnover kind of project person. I've been have more relationships with my client, few clients, deeper relationships. And I do bring a lot, but that's going to have to come out around the edges of conversation.
And I would also suggest too, Vern, give one. So what you're talking about here, Susan, is there's a broader concept here. The broader concept is recruiters don't know what you're thinking.
Yes.
And I don't just mean you, Susan, I mean anybody. So if you have anything on your resume that is a possible pink flag, for example, location. I've been doing a search and it's a remote job, but it's local, meaning you have to live in the DMV. And yet I get some people who are from out of state. Now, of course, they don't necessarily say, hey, we're relocating or whatever it is. I've had to make some assumptions or ask some questions. But the point is that if there's anything that you think would be a pink flag to the employer, whatever it is, could be your tenure, could be your location, could be whatever, you want to think about a creative way to say that on your resume, not to mention on your LinkedIn if it's something that you need, but walk a mile in the employer's shoes. They do not know your why. They don't know that you're making a transition. They don't know that you're shifting from this career field to that career field. Say it. If you are one of those people, let's say you're making an intentional move from career X to career Y, industry X to industry Y, on your resume for that application, right up top, career transitioning into X or Y, because they will not know. You cannot assume that they're going to read your resume and then just all of a sudden consider you, because they're risk averse and they're looking at every little thing that can screen you out because they don't want to make a risky hire.
Gotcha.
Vern?
Thank you. This is so helpful.
Yeah, sure.
Can I ask Susan? I think I could help you with digital marketing. Are you in Richmond or in Virginia?
I'm in Annandale,
What's that?
Annandale, Virginia.
Beltway.
Okay.
It's just
So you're
barely
in the-
inside the Beltway.
Because I actually want to connect with you, but I'm not sure if are you a PPC SEO kind of person?
No, not at all. I'm a strategist. I'm more of a digital strategist.
Because you said digital marketing and that kind of sense
that covers a lot of, so I'm also debating whether to use that, because people immediately go to the hands on the keyboard.
It's SEO
image.
PPC, because that's what I'm seeing in Richmond.
Yeah.
But what companies are you trying to look into? Because that would help us.
Well, I don't want to carry this off into, I'm just.
If you guys can maybe have an offline conversation.
Yeah, I think we should.
That would be great.
I actually think we should, because we will probably be here for 2 hours and you guys will suffer through that.
Well, we don't want to make them suffer. That's
Of course not.
Hey guys, Vern and Alki, I need to step away for just a minute. Would you guys mind just continuing on the conversation and asking for the next question for just a minute?
I have one comment for Susan, and then we can open it up to any other questions. So,
Okay.
So Susan, the other piece of marketing, that the whole job search is marketing, right? You're marketing yourself, right? So one of the things in the conversations as you're networking with others and you're telling them, what your goal is and you want to make this transition, I would make sure that in your conversations, you focus on some of the things that you just said, that you've seen a lot of different organizations. You've done a lot of different strategies for a lot of different types of projects. You've got this wide breadth of expertise and knowledge across a number of industries. I'm making some of this up. But then, to Elke's point, if you can get to the interview, then that's something you can impress upon the interviewer. Look,
a ton of
you've seen a lot of different things, so I can bring a lot of new thoughts, innovation to whatever this organization is trying to do from whatever the job description is.
Yeah, and I'm really looking for home base and to work with people on a day-to-day basis. Toward shared goals. That's
okay.
To Vern's point, and your point that you just made too. I know over my career as a recruiter, and I definitely call myself an advocate, because I came to this career unorthodox, and matter of fact, there's no recruiting degree that you can get, so a lot of us are unorthodox. But to that point, you've worked with employers, you've been in those environments, you've done everything probably except just be their W-2 employee. So it's pretty much just getting the translation in so that they see like, oh, wait a minute, so you do everything that we do. You look like, smell like, sound like an employee. All we got to do is figure out how we can get you in a uniform, get you a jersey. You can run as fast as the rest of our players. You take the shots that everybody on our team takes, but we just got to get you, certified and make sure, this is what you want. You're not going to leave in 2 weeks. You're not going to leave in a month. You're not going to get bored. And once you sell that, everything else you've already done. So, and a lot of this can be discussed offline too, but yeah, it's pretty much just speaking the language and letting them know, listen, I'm one of you. Yes, I've been a consultant in a contract, but I'm one of you. I've worked with you all. I've been in the environment. I've done the 9 to 5, the 8 to 5 or whatever. Just hear me out and give me the chance. That's, you guys are what I'm looking for. I'm already used to it. So,
well,
but
and
yeah,
I've done the state, you've been there 2 weeks and it's not going to work, and we all agree it's not going to work thing too. So I know what that looks and smells like. And I have deliberately taken my time to really think about this and test
probably your biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
That'll be your biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, thank you.
Can I share something interesting that might be useful to Susan and everybody?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
I saw a company in Richmond that I was really interested in, but I knew that they were above my school grade. Basically, they had a job I would want to do, but could never do because I didn't have the experience. But I knew a friend who would be great at the job. I emailed the people saying, I have a friend who's Jack, who is a Peabody and an Emmy Award winner. Left them a voicemail, just trying to be a nice person for the industry. I get an email back from them saying, we'd love to meet your friend. How about they send a resume? That's pretty impressive that even happens.
Well, I would say that's the power of human connection.
It's actually being in the right industry and knowing who the partners are and having access to email.
Having experience.
And being an industry girl too. I actually didn't have the job as an editorial manager. I wouldn't even know what to do because I'm a junior public relations gal. But the company, if you're curious, for you, Susan, it's your headquarters. And I was reaching out to the partner and the industry person, just saying, I have a friend who's really great. So maybe they'll remember Diana. Maybe Diana is not that PR queen, but she got us a good catch. Maybe we should, because I've done that. If you're an industry person, and I know I'm not going to be able to get into a company, but I'll do a LinkedIn so it looks like I'm a branding, still using my skills, even if it's not the company. And he responded that fast, was like, I have to see that person's CV. Do you have that? I'm like, I don't. But that person's a big deal. I mean, that company, I would have done anything. If it was the other way around, I'm the big executive person and a little young grad wants to get me in. Because I would say if it had been the other way around, I would be thrilled. Because you don't get that very rarely. You get a response like that. They had the email up. I left voicemail. I pretty much took action saying, okay, if they have something at my level, because I still put in my resume, they know I wouldn't be able to do the job. It's rare you get something like that.
Well, but the higher up you get, the more likely you're going to get that, because that's how
I actually know that person. I couldn't do the job. I looked at it, I was like, I cannot be an editorial manager. I don't even know. But for him, he just got lucky that we met at a networking group and I saw that job at that agency and I just couldn't do the job.
Yeah. So Diana, what you're sharing with the group is an example of what we talk about at context count. All of networking is simply a conversation between two people where your focus should be on teaching and giving. So,
and I wanted that agency for me.
You gave an example, and some people say, well, what can I give? How can I give back? And there's millions of ways you can give back. And Diana just gave an example of how she gave back. She gave back to a friend. It was a simple email.
I wanted that agency for me, but I knew that's not going to happen.
Well,
the PR people will eat your life. And they're going to be like, wow, this gal is not an editorial manager, but she got us a good, and he's like, he's a Peabody. I have to check if you're saying what it is, because a Peabody, and I was like, well, the only reason you got an email, I didn't even know them. I spoke to them for maybe 2 seconds at a college jam event, never thinking it would go anywhere. And I'm like, but now they'll know who you are, because I've done that for,
it may help you in the long run, but obviously, like I said, you've given back to a colleague and, they potentially will interview this person. So,
He was actually
wouldn't,
interested in
wouldn't any job seeker like that, right?
but
Somebody,
it helps if you're an industry person. I mean, if you're Suzanne and you were in Virginia, I would be looking at AMA. But if you're not an industry person, it's kind of hard because I have to know the industry and know how to do that. It's risky. If it's a PR firm, I know people because I've applied to most of them. Sure, I actually never had anybody do that for me. I'm like, well, if it'd been the other way around, I would want someone to do that for me.
well,
Have
and to have someone else do that for you,
would be a
again,
miracle.
this is the teaching part of networking. The more you teach others about who you are and what you're all about and what you're looking for and what your skills are and what your passions are, the greater likelihood they can help you, the greater likelihood they'll remember you when they see something and they connect it to Diana or Debbie or Deborah or whoever you're networking with.
Or
So-
Thanksgiving trick. I came up with a new trick for a business. You know how Thanksgiving is coming? And I was like, I have a Thanksgiving present for you. It's my school thing disguised as a Thanksgiving present because you're a business owner. Nobody gives you presents of resources. It's a way for, instead of me trying to explain what I do, we both suffer through it. But if I have a sheet, I can tell, here's how I thought of this because I missed a class in college called How Do You Explain What You Do? So I have to sometimes send the information, tell Fred, you really don't want me to explain it. We read it, I go over, so we kind of, somebody gets things. And one place was like, I'll keep you on the list. That's an edgy idea, Thanksgiving present. It's because Thanksgiving is coming up and you're a business owner. It's not really stuff, but it's stuff for the business, like marketing stuff from the Da Vinci Center.
That's great. All right, sorry, I had to step away for just a minute here in this part of the conversation. So where are we on questions? Does anybody else have a question? Deborah, Mark?
I was sharing an edgy
I just want
idea.
to, I can sign off on my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Deborah.
Yeah. So first off, I want to thank you, Alki, Vern, and Shira for the inspiration on LinkedIn posting and branding you gave me 2 weeks ago. I've been leaning into it and having a lot of fun and really enjoying it now. Like when I get up on Wednesday, I'm like, what can I post today and how do I tell my stories? So thank you for that. And the branding you gave me, I've got a couple of questions. So I'll just do my first one and then come back to my second one. But my first one, and I was thinking about this yesterday. In my last job transition, it was during COVID, which at that time on my resume, when I was applying for jobs, I had something that says actively seeking jobs during COVID. I still have kept that for a year because I still have kept that on my resume because I have about a year gap where it's like during the pandemic while I was job seeking, and then I put under what I was doing, like here's how I was volunteering. These are some freelance jobs I did. But I started to think about this the other day, like, is that something I should, 3 years out still have on my resume to explain, hey, there was, I was laid off in the pandemic. I don't have the word layoff, but it's kind of one of those things like, as we're getting farther away from that time, is this something, because the way I kind of look at it, it takes up a lot of real estate in a prime place on my resume to explain what I did for a year when I was laid off because of the pandemic.
I don't think there are a lot of people who have a year gap. I don't think it's any very big deal. If it was multiple years, I would. But at this point, since you did have, you had your job, you got laid off, then you got your next job a year later. I don't think you need to say anything. I don't, I understand why you did at that time, but now that you've had your job, I wouldn't bother with it. Unless you wanted to do, now, every once in a while, I see people, I mean, very rarely, but it can be effective, that throughout the resume, in little parentheses, like say underneath the dates of employment, just in small print, like 9 point or 10 point, to say reason for leaving : whatever, laid off due to COVID or whatever it is. But you would do that down the entire page, which, by the way, I mean, actually helps recruiters because then they don't have to ask you as many questions about that, right? You're kind of overcoming the objection. If you feel to do that, that's fine. And then it'll be just understood that you were laid off and you got your next job a year later. And a lot of that's the case. That's the case for a lot of people.
Can I ask?
Okay, I would think most recruiters, if it was, like a year gap, that's that's no big red flag. If
Yeah.
it's a 3-year gap or a 5-year gap.
They're wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
I would say it definitely depends. So if you have, if I have a lawyer and the whole resume is, I can see, guys, 8 years here, 6 years here, 5 years here, and then you have that 1 year somewhere in, we're not going to really worry about that. But if you have a resume though, and I'm fortunate, I've seen yours, Deborah, but if you were one thing for part of your career, and then you had this change, and you had a 1 year, 1.5 year job here, COVID and something else, that's when you want to think a little bit more about you having to explain yourself, because Shira talks about it all the time. Our employers are risk averse. And so when they're stopping more along the way to try to figure things out or have questions, I don't like that word flags, but flags, then it's helpful to start explaining, because they're going to have questions anyway. Like when they see a lot of changes, a lot of different gaps, and your resume is just not this nice, smooth thing, we're going to have questions, because as a recruiter, we're navigating. Hiring managers, for sure, they're going to take like 2-second look and they're like, what is this? I can't figure out what you want. So if I'm a recruiter, I look objectively to start. Okay, ability to do the job, but I'm looking at your journey too. And if I'm like, okay, she went over here, then she went over there, and then had to stop here, there's questions. And so that's when I feel it's helpful to put that little parentheses in there and just explain it, a quick little small bullet point. COVID, layoff, yada yada, and then it tells me, oh, okay, I get it. So when I call you to screen you, I'm gonna go in then knowing, okay, tell me your story, what happened here, and then you better have a good story. But it's better to put that on there if you have changes or you've changed, along the way.
Yeah, that's helpful. So to piggyback on the same question, then, like on my LinkedIn, on my resume, like, because I've heard some people say, if you say layoff, that has a negative, I don't know, association. But like, is there ever a case, like if I was laid off at my last job, like, is there ever a time where, like, maybe for my most recent one, you want to put in that parentheses under it, like 9, 10, small font, why I left?
You're saying just for one job?
Just for my most recent. Well, and then I would do it for multiples.
I would do it for if you're going to do it for one, I would do it for all.
You got to do it for all.
Yeah.
The whole way down. Okay.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea. Most people don't even think to do that, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's very helpful. The whole point of a resume is to help explain your job history to an employer, and knowing that we are looking for tenure and explanations and things, just you can overcome our objection before we even ask it. It's a very thoughtful thing to do, actually. No requirement, but it's nice if you can do it.
Okay.
I'll go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just say I'll noodle that, but I'll noodle what you said. Let marinate on this. Like, thank you for mine. Yeah. Go ahead, Alki.
Yeah, I was gonna jump off where Shirley left off. I think a lot has changed even before COVID, but with resumes, I think a lot has changed. Taking it way back, we used to type those things with a typewriter, and there's all these formats and these rules, and you better never do this and you better never do that. And then times have changed. We're living in a whole different world now. There's digital resumes, there's social media, there's all these different formats. And so now, with things coming at us so much, this may be your only chance. And people are doing it anyway. They've been shocked and awed already by something on social media or some other type of job search presentation. So talking about using real estate and what Shira said, you may not even, you may be in the pile and I may look for 5 seconds. That's your 5 seconds. So tell me your story, because I may not get a chance to call you back and ask you. So you wanting to get eyes seen on your resume, you want somebody to see it and pick it out of the pile, as opposed to just passing over it. So I say, as long as you use the real estate wisely, and to Shira's point, you don't want to make that 26 font and have that the biggest thing on your resume, but squeeze everything in there and that can still keep your resume looking sharp and professional. Like she said, give us the info, because we got questions, and all we're trying to decide is, are we swiping right or are we swiping left? We got a big pile, we're swiping left, What's going to make us swipe right? Give us the information so we can know.
That's helpful. And I think my second question I had, I've been on this, I've been in I guess this is my 4th month in transition, not finding a lot in my last industry. I'm being diligent about pivoting other things. But I think I've reached to a point where I'm leaning towards is like after Thanksgiving, I'm starting to get some freelance work coming in. Possibly there's like, I've got a couple options people have talked to me. So I kind of feel like I'm at this point where it's like, I really want to start freelancing, maybe even freelancing significantly. Still may go back to W-2 employment at some point, but I'm kind of like, if this comes together, this is what I'm going to do. But then I start thinking about this, okay, if I'm in a job search and I'm freelancing and I'm doing projects, how do recruiters then like think about that if I'm like if I go in and I'm trying to find like a W-2 later? Like, because it's one of these things, I don't know if I would do it long term or what it's at, but I'm kind of like,
It's okay.
if this is
it's not
yeah.
it's not a big deal at all. In fact, you don't even have to list freelance things on your resume per se, although you can if you just want to overcome your tenure. So for example, in your case, right, so you had your last job, now you're in transition. You can say as an entry on your resume and even on your LinkedIn, freelance, whatever it is, freelance administrative assistant or freelance executive assistant or whatever your thing is. And then even in the description part on your resume and your LinkedIn, you can say, currently providing administrative, freelance administrative support to a variety of clients while seeking full-time employment. That's fine. Very fine. I mean, nobody would have any issue whatsoever, which is very, very different than Susan's case because she was self-employed for many, many years. Completely different situation. If you're just trying to do a 1099 gig work on the side, everybody gets, sure, especially if you're trying to earn a little income, not a flag at all. And if anything, it shows that you're keeping busy and you are working. And so it can be even a helpful thing with your tenure to show that you are continuing to do work in your field while you're in job transition. People actually like that. Keeps your skills sharp. It shows that you're earning income. You know what I mean? It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Okay, and you're keeping your skills current. Deborah, did I share with you A Squared information, Jennifer Dale?
Yes, she and I are speaking next Tuesday.
Okay, all right. She's going to be a great resource if you want to follow that path. She, even if you don't, even if you don't become a candidate with them, I had a very positive experience with her as I was hiring a virtual assistant, and that's what they do. They hire virtual assistants, and they had a very well put together, way for me to go through that whole recruiting process. So that'll be a great resource for you to learn more about, freelancing and everything.
Yeah, exploring.
Okay.
It's Jennifer Dale because I'm not following.
Yes, it's a referral. Vern is giving a specific referral to Deborah because Deborah's an executive assistant, and that firm hires. Yes, it's not a general referral. It's just specifically for Deborah.
It's specific. Yeah, it's
okay. I guess I was kind of thinking it's a person.
No,
it's just a company.
Yeah, just
well, A Squared is the company. Jennifer Dale is the head of recruiting, and one of the things they do is recruit virtual assistants for consultants.
Yeah, executive assistants that are virtual.
It's a which is a pretty big business. There's lots of solo, entrepreneurs, lots of consultants, lots of business coaches, and if they need a virtual assistant, they find a way to hire them. This group has really put a process together that I was just super impressed with. So,
Deborah, I know a lot of people who would love to know you. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, we can
let's chat. Maybe do a Zoom coffee. That'd be great.
I'll put
Susan.
my LinkedIn in the chat for you.
Okay. It would be amazing, Susan, because you and I might connect since I have some. You never know. Maybe they need you, Susan, at SUR, since I'm kind of like chasing two people at the same time.
Mark, anything on your mind?
Yeah, what I have follows, I think, to some extent, the last one. I've been unemployed for about 2 years now, and the reason that I am unemployed is that illness, which ultimately affected my job performance, and I was terminated. Since that time, I hit that situation, that condition has been ameliorated, so it's not an issue anymore. Somebody at some point is going to ask me why the gap, and how did it happen? How does one handle a situation like that?
Yeah, so I would say because you don't want to be subject to any sort of discrimination based on your medical condition, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, right? You
Yeah.
want to avoid any reference to your own medical situation. So you can say something like, I needed to take a personal sabbatical. You could say I had to deal with a family medical situation, because you are your own family.
Yeah.
Family medical situation, but do not reference it for yourself, because that brings up stuff, yeah. And look, an employer knows they're not allowed to ask. I mean, employers who know HR law know they're not allowed to ask you, but it's still could be in the back of their mind. And that's the whole point, is you once it's out there. I had it happen yesterday where a candidate just blurted out a little medical condition to me, and it's like, oh, she didn't even realize she shouldn't have said that, just because it's there. And then it made me think things that I shouldn't be thinking. So you just be very, very careful, because human beings are human beings. Once we hear it, we hear it. You can't unhear it.
But I understand that.
So something, either personal sabbatical or family medical situation. And now, and it affected, my employment. So I had to leave, and now it's all resolved and I'm ready to return.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Can I ask? This is Diana. So if I have an interesting question, since I'm trying to switch to being a real interpreter, not saying fake, but a trained one, because I was an interpreter for my grandmother, not knowing I was an interpreter. And since I'm trying to apply for interpreter jobs outside of marketing, how do I explain why that job disappeared and I had to switch to industries? Now I'm coming back because I didn't even realize I had those skills. They just, what I'm saying.
So anybody who is trying to repurpose a hidden skill, you have to be very intentional about that, because employers, again, they're going to read your resume and they're going to see one thing, or they're going to see what they perceive to be your career. So I'm going to give Diane, I'm going to give a general tip here for everybody. Okay. And that is that if you're trying to highlight a skill that is buried in your resume, or in this case, it's a personal skill that you developed, any which way, it has to come to the top. It has to come to the top of your resume. So for example, you have your name and all of that. And then at the top, you could say, seeking translator roles, something like that, or interpreter roles. And then you can have a little section at the top that says interpreting experience. And in your case, it would actually be with your grandmother. And that's,
but I cannot say grandmother. I say a Russian person, and I use that I'm actually taking a course right now through Henrico Adult Education, putting in the skills we learned, trying to brush it up, because a lot of places want you to have years of experience. I'm like, guys, I do, but it's in medical, and I can list what kind of medical it is, because you guys call it healthcare medical. It's the same thing.
Whatever it is, whatever your experience is, you can have, and this is for everybody here, you could have a separate section right at the top. And I mention it at the top, not at the bottom. It's kind of like the old journalism rule of what they used to call above the fold. Okay. When you looked at a news, when they had, newspaper stands, you'd see the cover, whatever was most important was above the fold. That's what you need to think about. Whatever.
Can I put that up in a course?
However you want to brand yourself, whether it's course, whether it's personal experience, volunteer experience, whatever, work experience, whatever it is, right there. And you would say, in this case, interpreter experience, or maybe a person's going into healthcare, or they're going into education, or whatever it is, the X experience, education experience, healthcare experience, boom, boom, boom. So like you take up maybe a quarter of the page, just listing that. Then you can say additional experience, and additional experience would be the rest of your career. So that's just a general tip. You can airlift out whatever it is. Now, the other thing you could do, this wouldn't be appropriate for you, Diana, but anybody else on this call, if you're trying to highlight skills, in addition to having that little section, what you could also do is wherever that skill appeared in your resume, you can highlight it. I'll give you an example. I might have shared this on this call before, so I usually talk about this. And many years ago, I was helping an attorney transition to being a writer. How do you do that? Well, we know attorneys do a lot of writing. And so I obviously, as I went through his resume and I pulled out all of the different writing opportunities he had, right? Writing accomplishments, and I labeled the stories with his legal briefs, this, that, and the other. Then for the LinkedIn profile, wrote an about section that talked about the fact that he's making a transition to writing, the kinds of writing, why he likes to write. He ended up getting a job as a journalist with a legal trade publication. So he had that legal sector, so it was minimized the risk, but they were willing to try him out, and he did it for a long time, and now he's an English teacher.
Wow.
Okay. So I say that because you can do it, but you have to do it with intention. So you've got to draw it out of your resume and list those skills. Make sure that the employer understands that you are rebranding yourself. You cannot have them assume it. They will not assume. They will assume that you're going in the same direction as you came from. But if you are very, very clear, top of your resume, skills along the way, LinkedIn profile, that's how people will believe you that you're actually.
So I could add that. But what if I'm a multidimensional? I'm half interpreting, half public relations, like both ways.
Diana, that's the tricky part. And whenever anybody says that to me, I'm like, okay, you have to make some decisions here, because if you're going to try to be all things, it's going to be very confusing for employers. So I'm not going to give you an easy answer for that one. You've really got,
because that's me. I'll swing both ways.
I know, and that would be probably a separate conversation. I'm a career.
I think we would have to have a separate one, but
yeah. So I
would do both.
Yeah, I can't really opine on it right now, because I think Vernon and I both do coaching, and one of us can help you if you wanted to talk with us offline.
How do I schedule? Do I send you an email, Shira?
Sure, send me an email, and happy to talk with you about that.
Okay.
I would say this: once you figure out, and this is to everybody on this call, however you figure out what direction you want, once you do that, then you need to be very intentional in your branding, okay? Especially if the career paths that you're looking at are divergent. If they're similar, you can usually find a golden thread. But if they're very, very different, it's very important to be thinking, what do you want to lead with? So for example, somebody might say, I'm making this up, Diana, so I'm not going to get in a whole conversation, but I'm using it as an example, okay? So if somebody like Diana wanted to go pursue PR, but on the side, do a little bit of interpreting, that's no problem, because that's just gig work. That's 1099 work. And you can always tell an interpreting company, hey, by the way, I'm just taking this for 10 hours a week or whatever while I do my job. That's okay. That's not a big deal. I'm talking about when you actually are looking at two completely different career paths, you really need to think through what the path is, and so that your brand is consistent. So hopefully that helps.
Can you have two resumes, Shira, for both things?
You can have lots of resumes, but the thing is, the LinkedIn profile is where people are also going to go to see what your consistent brand is. If we didn't have LinkedIn, this wouldn't be as big of a deal. If you could just have multiple resumes, that's fine. But because you have a LinkedIn, they're going to see, well, how do you brand yourself on LinkedIn? Now, you can, in your about section, if you're going to lead with one, for example, if you're going to lead with public relations, you have a PR thing. And then at the bottom of your about section, you can literally draw a line and say something like, also offering, also have, interpretation skills, that's fine. But if it's an actual full-blown, I'm looking for a different career, you gotta.
Because I'm running into that, because when it's interpreting, they want you to have certification, which I'm working towards with public relations. It's like, I realized yesterday, you probably missed, I reached out to a company for a friend, because I knew if I'm not going to get in, at least a friend will get the meeting and it'll feel like as good. And pretty much they were impressed with the Peabody Emmy Award winner. I don't have those kind of things. So I'm like, wow, they were pretty interested.
You can send me a note. I'm happy to have a chat.
Awesome. I'll have to put that to my list so it actually gets down to my to-do sheet.
Good. Awesome. All right. So Deborah or Mark, anything else? I know we're a little early today, but just want to see if we can help you out in any other way.
No, you've answered my question for the day.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Alki or Vern, anything on your desks? Any interesting anecdotes that you want to share about candidates or job search, or anything that's happened that's notable that maybe we can learn from the last recent time? Oh, by the way, I actually had an intro. Oh, Vern, do you want to share?
I was going to say nothing's coming to my mind immediately.
I had an interesting one actually this past week, where this search I'm doing, the like, as I might have mentioned, the job is remote, but they insist that the people live in the DC area because they have to come into the office once a month. Okay. And I made that super clear in the, the bottom section and in the location section saying, please live in the DC area and here's why. And one candidate who lives in New York applied. And when I, talked about this, just making sure, can you relocate? She goes, oh, well, I kind of assumed that I could just commute, from New York. And I'm like, we were actually specific in the thing that you gotta live. And she just made an assumption that was incorrect. And I say that only because whether it's that or anything else, you got to really read the job description. If the employer is intentional enough about writing certain things, you got to kind of take them at their word, right? Now you can ask a question, but you don't want to assume anything. Like maybe when you apply, if they agree to the interview, immediately say, look, I've applied for this. However, maybe it's compensation or location or some other kind of make or breaker that they've already addressed. You don't want to waste their time, right? You want to actually address whatever your question is right up front so that there's no misunderstanding. So I just want to offer that.
That's a good thing, Shira, because I have to read when I was looking at those jobs. Are you guys remote or are you guys in just Arizona? Because they say you must come to our coast. And I'm like, okay, so you guys are in Arizona and the person better be in Arizona. Because you don't see it right away.
That's exactly right. If the employer does not say remote right there on top, and they do mention anything about on-site, assume that it's either hybrid or some version of on-site. Yeah,
or they say you must come to this section, and they say this is not a remote job. My good guys, because there's no way I can get to Arizona. I'm in Virginia, but I have to look at an Arizona job if I'm trying to study what they want, because the jobs are the same in every state.
Yeah, something else to know that a lot of employers do not pay relocation fees. So if you are ever applying for a job out of state that is requiring you to be on site, know that you'll probably have to relocate on your own. And number two, because they're risk averse, a lot of times they won't even consider people out of state because they've had it happen. In fact, I had it happen recently. There's another little tip for you, where some people will say they're going to relocate and then at the last minute they don't. Happens a lot. Deborah, I know you've been in recruiting too. Happens a lot. Kind of that 11:30 at night. Oh, I don't want to move to DC or whatever it is. So please know that employers are sensitive to that kind of thing, especially if it's a far commute, like a far relocation. If it's local, like Pennsylvania, maybe not. But if it's a far one, they're likely to be a little bit skittish to think that are you actually going to make the commute at the end.
It's good that they say that, actually. I like that they say that in the job description must be in this area because that saves me time. And I'm like, but you could still look at a job in another state as a study point on what the skills they want. Like using the job description if it says the job is in Arizona, the same job is probably remote, you could still know what they need.
Sure. Just don't only apply if you can live there, you just have
but
to.
You could still study it.
You just have to understand.
You can still study because the jobs start to look the same after a fourth job.
You can use that as a research tool for sure.
That's what I was saying. You copy it, even if it's in another state, at least you'll pick up the skills they need you to have.
Sure, for sure.
Well, on both sides of the fence, as a job seeker, you don't want to waste your time. And obviously the company doesn't want to waste their time. So the more specific they can be and the more clear they can be and the more clear you can be about what you want, that just makes it more time efficient in terms of the whole recruiting process. So
it's a targeted search on both sides, especially the employer. So what Vern said, Shira said, specifics are important. You asked about an antidote. I was sitting here thinking, it's just like going to Starbucks and they're like, yep, what do you want? And you're looking and you don't know and you're trying to figure it out. And any store, they're going to kind of want you to step to the side and let the people behind you who already know what they're looking for come so they can ask for it and then get them in and get them out. Resume and job description, same thing. It's about matching and you want to be specifically matched as much as possible. Otherwise, it is a waste. It's going to be a waste of time either way.
All right, very good. Well, yeah, Deborah.
Related on this topic, I had someone tell me, actually I posted about something on LinkedIn about remote or hybrid, and she wrote back and said, like, I think there's companies that are still figuring this out. Like, what does this look like? Like, for example, my brother is supposed to, had an agreement where he was going to go into the office 3 days a week. So he'd have his own desk. He's only going in 1 day a week because they haven't brought people back. But my person on the LinkedIn post said to me, she says, what's really important is to think about knowing what is the company's current policy, like if you're in like hybrid in person. But then she says, you also really want to figure out what's their vision long term, because it's like, this may be what they are, but then how do you figure it out the long term? And so it's an interesting question to me, because it's kind of like, this may be what they're practicing, but what's their vision?
So here's the thing, Deborah, and this is as somebody who's, and I know Alki and Vern would do this too. I talk to employers all the time.
Yeah.
They don't know. Usually.
Yeah.
They're in this very odd position right now because the CEO typically is the one who's got the vision for the in-person, but then they tend to get a lot of pushback from their employees, and HR doesn't quite know what to do, and they're backing and forthing, and then they're and so I would say, given where we are right now, I would say the pendulum, how the pendulum was over here, I would say it's kind of moving to the middle. I don't think we're quite where we're gonna be. We're kind of here though. We're not here, kind of here, meaning I think anecdotally, I think the majority of companies that have decided to go hybrid have decided to go hybrid. And the ones that are remote are remote. Are there going to be ones that are going to like, well, maybe we'll some, but not a ton. I think people have kind of gotten to that place right now, November 2023, okay, of like what they think they're actually going to do because they've been taking a temperature. Like, for example, the employer that I was just mentioning, they used to be on site like most people, and then they went full-time remote like most people, but now they've decided we're going to keep remote, but you got to live local so that we can have monthly staff meetings. So I think more or less we're kind of almost there.
That pendulum, it's funny because that pendulum, COVID had it over here for most people. A lot of employer leadership, they're like, hey, we've got to get back over here. And so they started this process. Some of them are still like, hey, we got to get back all the way back. But then there's so much happening in the world, to Shira's point, that it keeps swinging back and forth. And some of that too is you all, us, employees have shown them, oh, no, I've gotten used to being home and my kids are doing this. And so they're being very tricky with being 100%. Now, there are some who are, like Shira said, they've decided, listen, we're back in the office. And the easiest thing to do is to ask when you're in an interview, or if you're going back and forth, especially if it's listed as like hybrid or remote. I would really ask, hey, when did you guys make this decision, or is this the plan going forward? See what they say, and if they say, for now, or this is where we are, we can't promise the next 2 years, then you make the mental note. Well, this company, I have an offer. Next 2 years, it could change, and then you make the decision. But you'll never know if you don't ask, and it's a fair question to ask these days.
Oh yeah.
Unless they just flat out say, this is 100% in the office.
Right.
They're 100% in the office.
Absolutely. Or if they were already decided hybrid, then it's hybrid. Now, whether it's 2 days a week hybrid or 3 days a week, that's inconsequential because we're still going to live local. But if they say remote right now, to Alki's point, go ahead and ask the question: is that like for real remote, or are you intentional? Are you thinking about bringing people back? But something else you should know, and it's interesting. Keep referencing this employer because they're very top of mind right now, because we've been talking about this whole thing. Like, for example, the New York person. Part of why they don't want to relocate folks, or not relocate folks, have people live out of state. A lot of employers are dealing with this: tax reasons, employment law reasons. There are all kinds of stuff in other states that a lot of employers do not want to deal with. And this employer, in fact, on top of that, this employer said it's not even just that. Their medical insurance only covers like this local DMV. When you go outside of just this range, you're no longer covered. I mean, we're even talking like Richmond, like they can only go but so far. So just understand that it's not as simple as, oh, can I work remotely? It's whatever state you're in, that employer might say, look, we don't want to deal with all the administrative paperwork in dealing with someone outside. So there is that too.
I guess is what you're saying, Shira, is good to read the job description, because sometimes you realize you read the job title. I know sometimes, and then you read the job and you're like, wait a second, I like the job title, but this job is not what the job title says.
So let me address something, Diana. Thank you for bringing this up, and I hope people are going to watch this recording. Not only do you need to read the job description, you need to study that job description. You need to read it up, down, backwards, and forwards. Do not skim job descriptions. First of all, jump to the qualification section. Really, really read, what do they want? Because a lot of times candidates apply for things that they are simply not qualified for. Now, I'm not suggesting that there may not be a little tweak here and there where they can be flexible, but in general, when they put something in the qualifications, they mean it. And that's exactly who they're looking for. I recently was coaching somebody and she was looking at this vice president job or whatever. And there was this section that asked for, they said, we want you to have a global experience in this profession. She had everything else but that. And she kind of realized, amongst other reasons, she's like, yeah, it's not, right? But everything else looked beautiful to her. In fact, she looked at it like, oh, it's a great title, it's a great this, great that. I'm like, but did you see that they want global experience? I'm like, oh yeah, and just human nature, we gloss over things. We tend to see what we want to see. Some people call that selective, in the psychology world, they call that selective perception. I call it bullet number 5 syndrome. You know, you see bullet number 5 and you love that job and you don't see anything else. You got to really read this thing. Read the summary, read the responsibilities. What are they actually asking you to do? Are you qualified? Are you interested? Think about it. Really think about the behind the scenes. What are they actually asking for? What do they need? What are the outcomes that they're looking for? Really read it. Then you can decide, should you not only apply, but then you have to customize your resume, customize your cover letter. And yes, all this takes time, but this is all the more reason why you got to be very thoughtful about their applications. And if you are applying for it through a job board, know that you've got tons and tons of competition, which means you need to find an internal champion. You need to try to find somebody who's going to flag your resume to the recruiter, the HR person, or the hiring manager to get you noticed amongst the 100 other people that are applying. And also something else, if it's a remote job, now you've got 10x competition because you've got people often from all over the country who are applying for this. So if you're going to use a job board, try to go after local jobs because there are going to be fewer competitors. Remote jobs, tons of competitors. So those are my.
Sure, can I make a comment? Because when I was doing my Indeed search on Russian interpreter for Richmond, you could barely find anything. When you did remote, you had more options, but that doesn't mean that sometimes there might not be local jobs for certain jobs.
Right. Yeah, it's certain professions are going to lend themselves more to remote work. We had someone on the call, I think last week, who was talking about technical writing jobs. Or maybe it was a different call anyway, but in technical writing, you're going to have a lot of jobs that are freelance, for example. You got to look at your profession as to whether or not it's the kind of profession that's going to lends itself to something more remote or something more local. And especially interpreting jobs are often going to be freelance as well, not just full-time. So,
but you sometimes you don't know that you think there's going to be a lot in Richmond. Then someone's like, do you think there's a lot of Russian people? Or is it because so many 5 people you think is a lot? And you're like, well, and why would there be so much in Alexandria? What's going on those parts of the state, Alexandria? Because I was like, what's going on there?
You got to
be close to.
You got to use your thinking cap to think about where the jobs are going to be. So
it's helpful to start with just local and then get to remote.
I would do that. Start local and then go remote if you're not finding anything local.
I had to say, well, that means interpret that you guys want this experience, you guys want these certifications. Sometimes you have to apply for more, because sometimes you're like, well, it could be an add-on or it could be a standing skill, because I'm not even sure what it's going to be. Because I'm like, because the class, it could be both.
Yeah. So Diana, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to have an offline conversation with you.
That might be a better idea. And sometimes it can be interesting. Sometimes you meet a company that's not right fit for you, but it could be a referral for somebody else.
For sure. That's always a good point.
And sometimes you email to people you don't know, but if you have a friend who's a high level person who has the right skills, we know they're not saying yes to you. They're just really interested in seeing that person.
All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? We good? Okay. So for those of you who would like to stay on the prayer call that I offer, you're certainly welcome to do that. For anyone else, we look forward to seeing you next week. And by the way, I know this is a couple weeks in advance, but I do plan on being on here the Friday after Thanksgiving. If anybody wants to join me for that, I'm happy to stay around. Okay. All right. So wish everybody a blessed day, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.